I've asked Sally to do some big things for me in my lifetime. I got married on her front porch. We've been friends since, I think, middle school.
Yeah, middle school.
Who can remember that far back? And I remember vividly when she was in high school, she and her twin sister would sometimes have little discussions about whose turn it was to work the weekend in the neighborhood grocery store. So she's got a lot of experience with those sorts of things, and she's going to tell you all about it. Sally lives in Hills with her husband, Roger, and was a board of supervisor, and also, in fact, where's Jack at today? He should be here to say hi to Sally. She also has been a state representative, so she's got lots of other kinds of experiences, but I think the neighborhood grocery store formed her character, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
Yes.
Yes, it did.
And before she talks, I was just going to show you this. My grandfather had a general store in Vincent, Iowa, which is a town probably maybe like Andrew, Iowa, and at Christmas time, he's hanging in my kitchen, he gave his lady customers something every housewife needs and wants. Some of you know what this is?
Yardstick?
Pardon?
Yardstick? No.
Isn't it for
A
washing
grabber
clothes?
to
Oh,
take
grabber.
the hot
Yeah.
clothes out of the washing machine. And I have it hanging in my kitchen. It's just a wonderful keepsake, and it's got his name stamped on it. So he was one of the first neighborhood grocery stores, I'm sure. So, Sally?
Okay.
Take it away.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Lynn, for inviting me. I gave this program to my local Questers group, and I was telling Lynn, you know, how much fun it was to put it together and what memories it brought back, not only for me, but for various members in the Questers group, because we all had some kind of connections to neighborhood grocery stores. And Marcella, Lynn mentioned that I'm a twin, and was born in 1946. And, you know, that was way before ultrasound, blah, blah, blah. And my mom didn't know she was having twins. So she went to the hospital and couldn't imagine why all this commotion in the nursery. Everybody was talking about the twins. And she was thinking, who are they talking about? And then she realized, it's me they're talking about, you know, that I had the twins. So some interesting stories about coming into the world, that's for sure. Well, I gave this talk to my Questers group, and so what I'm going to do is, first of all, just kind of give an overview about country stores and what they mean in Iowa, and then talk more later on about my personal experiences in growing up in my dad's neighborhood store in Fort Dodge, Iowa. So that's where Lynn and I grew up, was in Fort Dodge. So I thank you for being here today, and I'm going to talk about the Saul Neighborhood Supermarket, the corner grocery stores, because many of them were located on corners, or the mom and pop stores that used to be part of all neighborhoods before the 1960s. Today I want to explore what a corner grocery store is, why they matter, how they have changed over time, the challenges they face, and what their future might look like, especially here in the Hawkeye State. As I said later in my talk, I would talk about my personal experiences growing up in my dad's corner grocery store in Fort Dodge, Iowa. So what is a corner grocery store? When we hear grocery store, many of us might picture large aisle after aisle of products, national chains, huge buildings, bright signage, and parking lots that stretch for acres. But long before those grocery stores existed, and even today standing beside them, were and are corner grocery stores. They were small, 8,000 to 1,200 square feet, and were found in neighborhoods, not strip malls, and were definitely not the big box stores that we shop in today. They were small enough for the owners, who were often local community members and many times immigrants, to turn a profit and make a decent living serving the surrounding community. They were in small buildings, many of which still exist today, and I'm sure many of you can drive around Makovinik and point out, oh, that used to be a grocery store, or that used to be a grocery store. You know, many of those stores still stand, they're retrofitted to modern businesses, but even my dad's store still is in Fort Dodge. It's heating and air conditioning business now, but the store is still there, right there on the corner. But long before those stores, big stores existed, and even starting beside them was the corner grocery store. Let's see, they were in small buildings, many of which still exist today, although their use has evolved throughout the years. I am sure many of you can pick out these stores in Maquoketa. They were small, community-focused food retailers, usually located within walking distance of homes. They were often family-owned and stocked a range of everyday essentials: bread, milk, eggs, canned goods, snacks, household basics, and basic vegetables, many of them homegrown. In Iowa, corner grocery stores are found in places both urban and rural, whether downtown districts of cities like Cedar Rapids or Des Moines, Main Street neighborhoods in small towns like Bloomfield or Winterset, or in unincorporated communities surrounded by farmland. But a corner grocery store is more than just a place to buy goods. It's a hub of community life. To understand the importance of corner grocery stores, we need to understand their history. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, as towns in Iowa grew and neighborhoods became established, corner grocery stores emerged as essential services. These were the places where farmers and townspeople alike gathered after church, dropped in after school, or made a quick stop on the way home from work. Back then, goods were sold in bulk, weighed out by the pound, and packed into paper sacks. Storekeepers knew their customers by name, remembered their preferences, and often extended credit when money was tight, especially during harsh Iowa winters or tough economic times. In many ways, cornerstones defined neighborhood life. They were places where news was shared, friendships were formed, children were greeted by name and often disciplined. Conversation was as important as commerce. And during the Great Depression, these stores were lifelines in communities. During World War II, they helped with rationing and neighborhood cooperation. For generations, they helped with, they were where Iowa's shopped long before the advent of the supermarkets and the big box stores. One of the most important aspects of the corner grocery store is the social role. We live in an age where community cohesion, neighborhoods knowing each other, local life being personal, is harder to preserve than ever. People move more often, work longer hours, and increasingly interact with cell phones rather than neighbors. But corner grocery stores have served as social anchors. They are one of the few remaining places where you can see someone's face and have a conversation. Employees know regulars by name, and shopkeepers remember birthdays and anniversaries. Iowans in particular know the value of neighborliness. The Midwestern spirit of connecting with others, of real human interaction, has kept many corner grocery stores alive, because for many customers, convenience is secondary to connection. Whether it's a brief chat at the counter or simply seeing a familiar face on the way home from work, these stores help maintain the social fabric of towns and neighborhoods. These grocery stores had economic importance in local communities. Beyond the social aspect, corner grocery stores have economic value, especially in smaller towns. Think about the places where large chain stores might not find it profitable to operate. Here's where a corner store fills a gap. I often think about the progress of Walmarts and how when they first came into being, Walmarts were only in the big cities. You know, you had to travel quite a ways to go see a Walmart. And now they're everywhere because I think they realize the value of even in small communities. You know, there's economic value in having a Walmart down the street. And that's kind of the niche that they have filled after the corner grocery store. The large chain store might not find it profitable to offer where the corner stores fill a gap. They provide accessibility to essentials, they retain local spending within the community, and they support local employment. For rural Iowans without easy access to transportation, a nearby corner store might be the only place where within walking distance for daily necessities. Even in largest towns, corner stores help reduce the need for long trips and is especially important for older residents or families without reliable transportation. The corner grocery stores really started to evolve or lose their prevalence in the community when the car came into existence. People no longer had to walk to the grocery store. They could get in the car and drive wherever they wanted and for as long a distance as it took to get to the grocery store. And then they could buy groceries for a week instead of just a carton of milk and a loaf of bread that would last them till supper time, and then they go back to the store the next day to buy some canned goods or whatever. So it's not surprising that we lost the corner grocery stores because of the car and the urbanization of our communities and suburbs coming into being, where it didn't matter that if you needed to walk to the grocery store. So the grocery stores went by the wayside, and they had many challenges. Mainly the big thing was competition from large chains. Stores like Walmart, Hy-Vee, Fairway, and others offer deep inventories with low prices, and smaller stores struggle to match. Supply chain pressures. Smaller stores often pay higher prices for goods because they cannot order in the same volume as big chains. Economic sustainability. Margins can be thin. Costs like rent, utilities, and payroll are the same whether your store is huge or compact. Labor shortages. Many small towns rely on a handful of employees or family labor. Hiring and retaining staff can be difficult, especially in rural areas. And rising operating costs, from food prices to health insurance to wage expectations, cause rise year after year. And changing consumer habits. Online ordering and delivery are convenient for many shoppers, especially the younger generation. All these pressures can make operating a corner grocery store demanding. So why should we as communities, whether residents, leaders, or advocates, care about corner grocery stores? Let me outline several reasons. Food access and equity. For many residents, especially in rural or low-income neighborhoods, corner stores are crucial sources of food and essentials. Preservation of local identity. These stores reflect the character of their own towns. They are not cookie-cutter chain outlets. They are our neighbors in business form. Community building. Corner stores foster face-to-face interaction in a world increasingly driven by screens. Economic location. When money is spent at local stores, more of it stays in the community, supporting other local jobs and services. And cultural continuity. They preserve tradition, personalized service, and intergenerational relationships, values that are deeply rooted in Iowa's culture. Now I'm going to spend some time talking about my experiences growing up in Fort Dodge in the grocery store that my dad owned. According to 1928, the Fort Dodge City Directory, there were 76 retail groceries in the city, most, if not all, neighborhood grocers. Fort Dodge had a population at that time, and still the same population today, of about 32,000 people. So that to me is pretty remarkable that there were that many grocery stores in a community of that size. They carried what was called general merchandise stock, old-fashioned meat counter, meat cut from carcasses delivered by Iowa beef producers, fresh produce, canned goods, and other things depending on the store. On the counter would be a hand crank adding machine, countertop scale to weigh merchandise, a cash register, and clear plastic bags filled with hard candy, homemade peanut butter, and nuts in a shell, plus goodies to tempt the consumer. In an article published in Fort Dodge in February 1993 on neighborhood grocery stores, only 2 neighborhood grocery stores remain. The Big Three, which was located downtown Fort Dodge, and Jackowell Foods, which my dad owned and ran for more than 50 years. Jackowell was located across from What was the name? Olson Park.
Olson Park.
Olson Park in Fort Dodge, and that was equivalent to the city park. You know, it was the big park with the band shell and a little toy train that ran around a track and a few animals. So it was a great place to have a grocery store because the park was so popular. Both of the stores that were downtown and my dad's had occupied the same location and have retained family ownership. Most of the stores were run by Italian immigrants who largely came from Italy to Fort Dodge to work in the brickworks. Their names were Sam Camino, Silvio Ronconi, Rocky Jackowell, Eddie Cassidy, Peter Lorenzo, Frank Seguro, Martin Cassiopolo, Abe Castagnoli, Tony Amanzio, Sam Marino, Joe Armato. So you kind of get the drift of their nationalities from those names. Other small groceries were run by the Breckenwald family, the Sandbergs, and the Rosses. So they weren't all run by Italian immigrants, but most of them were immigrant families. But most of the stores were run by Italian immigrants because they were very entrepreneurial and not afraid of hard work. At one time, there were 14 grocery and/or meat stores owned by Italian families. They formed a group for mass purchases, especially of flour. They would meet on a Tuesday evening, take orders, and then they would have flour shipped in by carloads over the Illinois Central Railroad. The stores would send their own trucks or cars down to the freight depot to pick up what they had ordered. Flour at the time was selling for $1 for a 25-pound bag. My dad had a good meat business and eventually even had a locker. He would make Italian sausage, potato bologna, potato salad, ham salad, and he taught many young people how to cut meat from a carcass, which is almost a lost art since most meat nowadays is already cut boxed meat that is already cut off the bone. I remember going into the cooler and seeing the many full meat carcasses hanging there. He would take a carcass out of the cooler and off the hook, slam it on the butcher block, and began cutting away. Dad was a great believer in letting meat hang before cutting it, which meant it was more tender and flavorful, something that big box stores no longer take the time to do. I have a favorite story. Iowa beef processors originated in Fort Dodge, and when they were first organizing, one of Dad's customers was one of the original owners, and he came in and he asked Dad, he said, "Carl, do you want some stock in Iowa BP, or would you rather have a fresh carcass every week?" And my dad, being Dad, said, "I'd rather have a fresh carcass." And my sister and I often think, gee, I wonder what that IBP stock would be worth today. But anyway, that was where Dad's heart was. Another thing Dad was processing and dressing chickens, capons, and wild game. At Christmas, it was all hands on deck, and we would be in the downstairs at the basement of the store, butchering capons, dressing them, and then getting them ready for customers' Christmas dinners. The process would never fly today with Iowa ag regulations, but as far as I know, no one ever got sick or died from one of Dad's capons, and people love the fresh dressed birds. Dad went to work at 6 o'clock every morning, even on Sunday, and stayed open until 8 o'clock, except on Sunday when they closed at noon. The same neighborhood stores offered personalized service and even free delivery. Customers became friends, and you always called them by their first name, and they did you. Dad did credit on groceries, and bills were paid on Friday when the gypsum mills, which weren't real far from the store, and Hormel's, and other businesses paid their workers. Neighborhood grocers often help people who needed help. I want to share with you a letter that somebody wrote to my cousin. My cousin still lives in Fort Dodge and still has the name Jackowell. And they had sent a bill into the county department at the Messenger, the local paper, and had gotten this note back on their invoice. And this is what it says. "I don't know if you were related to the Jackowells who owned the grocery store by Olson. Grace, and I can't remember her husband's name, which was my dad, Carl. She confused him and thought they were married. but they weren't. They were brother and sisters. If so, they were outstanding human beings. They saved my family's lives, exclamation point. They helped feed a family of 7 when my father got hurt and lost his job. They put my older siblings to work until my dad got back on his feet and could pay them back. I was only in kindergarten at the time, but I'll never forget the pride and value that name Jackowell has to me. Thank you, one of the Jones kids. You know, and I can remember that family coming into the store and you know, picking out groceries, and you know, they were on hard times, you know, and they needed the food to feed their family, and it just made me feel really good that my dad and aunt took care of them until they got back on their feet again. Dad started in the 1930s and 40s and was known for primarily making homemade ice cream and secondarily for its groceries. He made several flavors and sold ice cream cones for 5 cents. At that time, the ice cream machine was quite a deal, but then Dairy Queen and other ice cream businesses came into town and Jackowell's turned to more groceries and meats. When Dad returned from the war in 1946, they had pretty much quit making ice cream. While Dad was gone, the store was run by his sisters. They still made some ice cream in later years, but it was the old-fashioned favorite, and it was the old-fashioned favorite in the neighborhood. I want to talk a little bit about the back room, you know, and I think most grocery stores had what they call back rooms. And this is where people would stop after work, go up to the front, buy a beer, and come back and then just visit among one another, you know, where you just shared what happened at work, shared what was going on with your family. And it was just, you know, and you knew all the customers, you knew all the people, and then they'd have their beer, and then they'd go up and buy a few groceries, and on their way home they went. The store always stayed in my family. My aunts worked there as well as my cousins, and children of customers would help out too. The hope was for my sister and I to take over the store, but after college we had other plans. Dad sold the business in 1993 due to his declining health. It was a very sad day for my dad. He loved the store. The big supermarket chains, Hy-Vee, Fairway, Wegmans, Safeway, Kroger's, even Walmart, and now Target, might be doing fine, but they voluntarily have withdrawn from a huge segment of the potential market, and in doing so have made it more difficult for small towns, urban neighborhoods, and mixed-use developments to join their own conveniently located local grocery store. It's too bad, because it's a retail concept that's more appealing to many Americans than these chains seem to realize. So that concludes my remarks. I don't know if anybody has questions or if they have personal reminiscence about their experiences of being in grocery stores, the Swamp Corner grocery store.
We live a block away from what was called the West Side Grocery. And when my kids were little, we used to stop in there. I'd buy them little snacks and stuff. Well, one day the 2 older girls were at school, and Steve was 5 or less. And I'm downstairs ironing in the basement. And here comes Steve with a big bag of potato chips. And I said, Steve, where did you get that? He said, at the little store. And I said, how did you pay for it? And he just shrugged his shoulders. I said, we have to go back and pay for it. He says, but you go in and get stuff and take it out. I walked him back down, told him he had to give it back. He was so little they hadn't even seen him come in and go out.
You know that when the store was right across from Olson Park, and there was a little swimming pool there, and so there were lots and lots of kids there during the summer. And I remember those kids coming into the store with a penny and standing for practically an hour trying to decide what they were going to spend that penny on. I don't know how anybody could spend as much time deliberating over a piece of penny candy as so many of those kids did, but that was important. Oh, yeah.
I certainly, when you mentioned the Italian names, it brought to mind the names that come up that you remember, like Merle Russell and Vern Westfall and other names I'm sure you remember. But names just stuck with you.
Yeah.
People that
right, you just remember those names. And that was here in Macokota, huh?
Yes.
See, I don't think you probably had very many Italian immigrants here, did you?
No.
Just mostly.
Across from the little store, the West Side store, was Hartford's. And I remember going to Hartford's on Halloween, and they made you do a trick before they gave you treats.
Oh, really? Yeah. Oh, boy.
And yeah, this is Hartford, so, we're the weather advisor for the Rainbow, yeah.
I remember Manning Meat Market. That wasn't a little store, grocery store, because you only got meat, but they were run just like the little grocery stores.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of those evolved into meat markets because they were, you know, they knew how to cut meat. You know, they knew how to get a good cut of meat and make it tender and make it flavorful and knew what they were doing. So, you know, and I think I understand why consumers gravitated to the big grocery stores. You know, they were convenient, lots of choices, everybody likes new paint and cheaper groceries, but I think we've really lost a lot by losing out on our corner grocery stores and the convenience and the community sense that they instilled in the communities. So, but that's progress.
I just remember the Russell Brothers, there were two Russell Brother grocery stores. And there was one on East Platte Street right down here. And when I was little, I remember they had big wooden bins out in front.
Okay.
And they would be potatoes and things like that out in front of the bins. And then there was always a fancy screen door. And to keep the flies out, I guess, you know, but with all the different wood things and everything. So that grocery store, ended up being my dad's plumbing and heating store.
Okay.
You mentioned a grocery store that became a plumbing and heating store. Well, that's what that became. And not too long ago, when my brother took that building down, I said to him, the Historical Society needs that door. Because it was so, but something happened, we didn't get it. Everything just kind of, I think, went down in the basement. We didn't get that, but just remember that screen door, and it always had a metal sign of some sort advertising.
Colonial bread, I bet.
Probably,
Yeah,
probably.
Yeah, that's what I remember.
Yeah. So it was just such a neat thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right there you had.
What has happened to your father's store? Is the building still?
Yeah, it's still there, and last I heard it was a heating and plumbing business. You know, it had parking and it was on a corner lot, and so, it's nice that it's still standing, so.
What year did you say your dad sold that?
1993, yeah.
I was going to say, today, the corner store is Quick Star at Casey's.
Yes.
That's right.
Except you don't get that special treatment.
You know, and part of the big reasons why so many of those small stores lost business was because of the prices. And what do you pay at Casey's and Quick Star for a gallon of milk? You know, and people don't think anything of it. You know, and I know not a lot of people, but some people buy their weekly groceries at those stores. And I'm thinking, well, I guess the convenience outweighs the. But you're right. You know, there's somebody different behind this cash register every time you go in there, isn't there? Yeah.
Did your family live upstairs over the store?
No.
So many did.
Right.
You know.
No, we never did. And my mom never worked in the store. And I never asked her why, because it was my dad's side of the family that worked in the store. You know, his sisters and, well, of course, us kids. But no, we lived away from the store the whole time he had the store. But many families did live above the store. Matter of fact, Lynn and I worked at DHS together, and I was an adoption worker. And I remember doing a home study for a family, and one of the other caseworkers said, well, we can't approve this family. They have a grocery store, and they live above the grocery store. And I was just incensed. You know? I said, there's nothing wrong with living above a grocery store and raising a family. You know, there's nothing wrong with that at all. So, yeah, it's funny how people have different ideas about things.
So, the other day, a friend of mine was talking about her mother used to, they had a neighborhood grocery store, and her mother would say, send her to the grocery store to get a pack of cigarettes.
Oh, really? Oh,
Could never happen now, but.
I can remember selling cigarettes for 28 cents a pack. Can you believe it? What are they, $7, $8 now a pack? Yeah. Talk about inflation.
I would have to go to Russell Brothers and get a carton of Raleighs for my mother, and they were $3 for a carton.
Yeah, and you got to buy those,
Yep,
yeah.
just walk in
And
and,
how old were you, Bonnie?
oh, probably 6, 7.
Yeah.
Well, that was a nice thing. You could go, I mean, I remember my grandma giving
yeah.
me like a nickel to go to the grocery store that was like, I don't know, half a block away, and I got an ice cream cone.
Uh-huh.
And one day I lost my nickel on the way there. Oh, it was terrible.
That was disaster.
Yeah, that's a sad story.
Did you have a comment?
Yeah, that was a beautiful story about your family during keeping out of the family fed. I mean,
Uh-huh.
that was Iowa nice,
Yes, it was.
and a lot of it. But I'm a native Jackson County. I left early. My brother Gerald. We remember the country stores, but Emmeline Iron Hill. That's part of your family, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know that at the time, but anyway, both those are gone. Our
Yeah.
Uncle John Streets owned Highway and Market. The building's still there. He worked there too, didn't he? Yeah. He was a meat cutter. He'd been a meat cutter for Manning. And they went to business in Loudon. He came back here and bought that building. And did that everything. Had the back room, okay?
Yeah,
It
yeah.
had a slaughterhouse on the end, which would not work today.
No.
At the end of the week, we loaded up the awful the insides.
Yeah.
And we took them out to a little farm up Iron Hill he had, and they went there for the vermins to eat. I mean, it was a different world.
Oh, it was.
But it was comfortable, it was trustworthy, you could walk out at night, you didn't have to worry.
They delivered groceries too.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember putting Brewery's beer on the counter, that was the one that came in, and all up to bananas. I kind of worked one day at the counter register money, or the cashier. I didn't know the price, that isn't, they had to know the prices.
Yes.
You didn't have a
And
barcode.
you put prices on with a grease pen, you know, you didn't have any kind of computerized labels or anything like that, or look up instantly on your computer what the price of something was, so.
Or you didn't mark it at all, everybody just knew the quart of milk was.
Yeah, or how much corn was. Corn was a big seller always at our store, you know, we were always putting up canned corn, but.
It was a time that you long maybe to go back, but as Mom always said, I said, was it a good time? Yeah, but I don't want to go back.
Oh.
She made it pretty clear that convenience is good. That's a story of small, convenient access to necessities.
Mhm.
That was what worked.
Yeah. And you didn't have to have 25 different kinds of kidney beans, you know, you know, 2 kinds were on the shelf and you pick from those, and that's,
But thank you for sharing.
oh, thank you. Did you have a,
I was just gonna say Iron Hill Store was my childhood,
There you go.
and we used to meet there to all walk to school together.
okay,
And of course, there were 2 schools at Iron Hill. One was east
Yeah.
and one was west, so I always tell everyone now I went to West Campus.
oh,
West Campus. But Iron Hill was my store when I was a kid. We used to go there and get ice cream, candy, whatever.
yep, yep. And you could go by there yourself, couldn't you? You
Oh,
didn't
yeah,
have to.
oh, yeah. Well, I remember we lived about, I don't know, a mile and a half probably north of the store, and it was a dirt road at that time. But I remember walking barefoot. I was gonna get to the store because Dad gave me a nickel. But I got halfway down and there was a little snake that crawled across in front of me and I wouldn't walk. I went back home and got my shoes. Walk there. But yeah, we just walked to the store, but the whole neighborhood kids were together all
Oh,
the
yeah,
time.
yeah.
Yep.
Manning's Meat Market was mentioned earlier, and Joe Manning ran Manning's Meat Market, and he was on the original bank board, Maquoketa State Bank. And what I recall about Joe was he really knew what was going on in the community,
Uh-huh.
and he was very helpful. He's
Yeah,
a good
but they were,
businessman.
pretty discreet. You know, I don't remember them ever spreading gossip or, you know, they knew how to kind of keep their mouth shut and, you know, sympathize with people that came in, but nobody else knew their business, that's for sure. That's for sure.
When my great-grandfather died, we found ledgers that he had kept, and it had unpaid bills that he had given, you know, allowed people credit, and,
Yep.
and they hadn't been able to pay him back. And,
Yeah.
you know, but he still had a nice life. It was a nice lifestyle. He
Yeah,
was fine.
and that was the truth. And I just often think, we'll try to do that at Hy-Vee today, you know. And they do a lot of charitable, good things in the community, there's no doubt about that, but not that individual contact, you know, helping somebody else when they go to the food bank now, I guess, so.
I got another thing, we recently ran up on a ledger from an old store that used to be in your neighborhood, Roger. And
Really?
Center, there was a store like at Harriet Fowler's old house.
Really?
It was a center store or something like that, that Don Wentworth was telling me about. But anyhow, in the ledger, it was funny because it was for Don Wentworth's great-grandpa or whatever, but the only thing they bought was sugar and coffee and maybe some boots or something.
Yeah.
And they came to the store in April, and then they didn't come to the store again until November, you know? I mean, they just lived off of what they had at home.
Oh,
This is
really?
back in the 1800s.
Yeah.
Right, right.
But, yeah, I thought that was so funny.
Huh. Interesting.
Interesting, the stuff, there was no Tide detergent or fabric softener, or that kind of stuff.
Right.
So everybody loves Red Hinton, and he always told the story about how he and Bernice had a small store in Fulton, Iowa, and there were 2 stores there at the time. And it, you know, people would charge, and their bill would get bigger and bigger, and sometimes they wouldn't come in to pay, and he'd send them notices and everything, and they just start going to the other store when they're, you know. So he found that the best way to do that was when he sent out his next monthly statement, he added $20 to it. Just add to the balance, and they didn't know why. So they would all come into the store to argue that, you know, they owed the lower amount, and then he got his money. And that's how he did that.
Very clever, very, very
That was
clever.
Red Hinton.
That's pretty good.
Well, one other comment?
I was just gonna say, I lived a half a block away from Russell Brothers, not the one down by my dad's gas station, but the one up on Maple Street. It's the corner of Maple and Main. And I would use my penny for a grape gum. It never took me long because I was over there all the time. I knew exactly what they had, and you got to get your own out of the jar. It was great, but my favorite part was going over because there was Merle and Opal and Grace that worked there, and Merle always would get our meat, and he'd say, "Come on back, Christy." And I'd get to stand back there because I was fascinated with not just the cutting of the meat, but pulling the paper off the roll, cutting it off, and then wrapping it with the string, and how fast his hands went. And it was like, I'd go home and try to do that. It never worked. But yeah, and my grandma had a collie. Her name was Peggy, who came to the store with us kids all the time, because there were, at that time, there were 5 of us living a half block away. And Peggy would just travel with us everywhere. And one day he came in the store and Grace was chasing him out. And then Opal went back and got some scrap or something and put it out by the door. So told us maybe Peggy should wait out here next time, you know. But it was, they were family, you know.
Oh, that infamous bone box that Dad had underneath the butcher block.
I just thought of a true story, but what got me here was, because I heard the topic was gonna be about, you know, corner stores and whatnot. But I know when in '78, we lived on Central Street in Dubuque, and they had an Okie Dokie store. And as a kid, I would take money on Mom's purse without her knowing and ignore the store. You just have an Okie Dokie, you get like these, just little things, you know. But also, Other stores come to mind too. The one just closed in Oxford Junction was Coons. They actually kind of meet there too. It's kind of like a general store. Awesome. There's a little market. Here's a story I wanted to tell. Because we grew up in Clinton a little bit too as kids. And I remember going to the store, I don't know what store it was, but they had a Cops Market in Clinton. I don't know if it's still there or not. I don't think it is. But going in, they used to have candy displays, and the candy would be right out there where you could, as a kid, you could just reach in and grab yourself some candy, which is what I did. And stuff, I remember, I think it was M&M's, stuffing a bunch of M&M's in my pocket. And my sister, about 4 years older than me, we get in the car, we're sitting in the back seat of the car, and I'm crunching away on these M&M's, and my mom goes, "What are you kids eating back there?" And my sister, of course, she ratted on me. She says, "Well, Mom, he took M&M's from the candy corner, the candy from the store, and that's what he's eating. Well, we're going back in there, and you're going to we're going to get somebody's attention and tell them that he took his candy, you're going to pay for it." Went back in the store, and here's the grocery boy. He didn't, and here I am as a little kid. He didn't want anything to do with it, but Mom goes, "No, go ahead and get you." So here I pull this candy, M&M's in my pocket, probably lint and everything else, and trying to get the candy back. And I don't think they even cared, really.
Probably, yeah. It's too
But
bad.
Mom cared, and she wanted to make sure I knew that.
Good lesson, yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't taken any candy from the store for a while.
Oh, that's good.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, yep.
Grew up in the community of Lost Nation with a population of 800. We had 2 grocery stores.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And it wasn't a corner store because the post office got that spot. But right next to it was the co-op grocery store. And one more store down was B&F grocery store. And the fun thing about growing up there was when you go in and get your mom would get the groceries, there'd be something that was missing. Well, the clerk would just run out the door, run down to the other grocery store and exchange, write it down, and she'd bring it back and we have what we needed. And if the brand wasn't available at the one store, you simply went out and walked over to the other one. So it was like 2 big box stores in one.
No kidding. Oh, that's pretty convenient.
That's funny.
Well, Marcel?
We just lived a short ways from the Emmeline store, just down the hill. And it was when the fire, the family lived upstairs, but they had a fire, and that was the end of the Emmeline store.
Oh, really? Yeah. We had a fire in our grocery store too, but Dad rebuilt. You know, we thought, oh good, Dad's gonna leave the grocery store, you know, because he worked there all the time. No such luck. He rebuilt, so he ran it for a few more years after that. So. Well, I thank you for this opportunity, and I love hearing these your stories too about the grocery stores and how much they met as you were growing up.
So I just wanted to ask if you would talk a little bit about Questers.
Oh, sure, sure.
So
Do you have a Questers group in Macokota? Lynn said you...
I don't think so. We've had a couple Quester speakers over the years, but nobody local. But I think it would be wonderful if everybody knew what that was.
Okay. Well, it's a group of, well, for us it's women, but it's not exclusively for women. But it's an international group, and they used to focus on antiques, and they've kind of gotten away from that and are more focused on preserving old things and collections and things like that. Our Questers group has about 15 members, and we meet once a month in somebody's home, usually, or at the church, and somebody gives a program on something. You know, the last Questers meeting was a program on dolls. There's one gal that's just kind of an authority on Christmas, and so she has lots of different programs that she gives on Christmas. But you always learn so much, you know, and it's just a good place to get together and share stories and share information about collections, about preserving history and things. They do issue grants, you know, if people are wanting to, you know, save an organization or whatever. So it's a good group. I belong for probably about 15 years now, and I always enjoy the programs. There's always something different.
And I understood it was an international group?
Right,
There were,
right.
so there's kind of chapters, is that the?
Right,
Oh.
right. There's chapters in different communities. I think Iowa's pretty active with chapters and things, but just like everything, you know, they're losing members as members get older, and young people are just so busy with other things. But yeah, it's international, and have a national convention every year, and have what they call state days, where you go to a community and then they highlight their historical societies, or their might have a house tour or whatever. So you're always learning something.
What's your group called?
Questers, Questers.
Kind of like brown bag lunch.
Right?
Yeah,
So,
it is.
I think you need to mentor Lynn.
Okay.
And she can start a Questers chapter in Macokota or in Jackson County.
She
We
doesn't,
need one.
she doesn't have anything else to do.
That's right.
You don't have anything else to do, right? Oh, good, that'll give you something to do.
Oh, God. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.